This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1697, Avengers Infinity War movie review.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Brian Chrisman.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Chris Everly.
And I'm Matt.
Comic Geek Speak.
And welcome to the show. This is our movie review of Avengers Infinity War. So, of course, spoilers.
Infinite spoilers.
Forewarned is forearmed. But first, a word from our sponsor.
And that sponsor is the Collection Drawer Company, maker of the Drawer Box Storage System, the easy-access comic storage solution. And let me tell you, folks, that those drawer boxes are a godsend to those of us who have extensive collections still stored in those old-fashioned, lift-the-lid-off-the-top style cardboard long boxes. The drawer box is a variation on that theme, except instead of having a lid on the top that lifts off to access the comics from the top, it has an inner shell that pulls out of the front of the box like a drawer so that you can access your comics that way. That way you can stack more boxes one atop the other and still be able to access them even if the box is on the bottom by pulling out that drawer from the front. Easy peasy. You can stack them as high as 5 one atop the other. It's really very convenient and a great space saver. It's great for convenient access to your comics. The Collection Drawer Company also offers accessories such as the Box Locks Stabilizer, which prevents box tipping and provides even greater long-term stacking strength for your collection of boxes. And there's also the Box Sort Upright Divider, which prevents the contents of your drawer boxes from falling over, prevents spine cracking, and it's also a good organizational tool for the comics within. And they offer drawer boxes in a variety of different shapes and sizes, so you can use them not only for comics, but for magazines, for action figures, for LPs, etc. They're stronger than they've ever been, owing to recent improvements to the design. Now they've added an extra reinforcing layer of cardboard to the outer shell, so it's now triple strength. Previously, this was only available in the magazine-sized drawer boxes, but now all drawer boxes are made that way. They're strong enough that you can... They've actually had a little thing going on at San Diego a while ago where they encouraged cosplaying attendees to hit their boxes with hammers, and lo and behold, they survived beautifully. So, visit collectiondrawer.com to read more about it. That is the home of the Collection Drawer Company, maker of the drawer boxes. And if you decide you want to take that plunge and convert your collection storage from old-fashioned long boxes to drawer boxes, they do offer large volume order discounts, so they'll be happy to work with you to make your dream collection organization happen. That's collectiondrawer.com.
All right. So we've all seen Avengers Infinity War at least once. Who's seen it twice?
Twice.
I saw it twice as well.
I've seen it twice.
Nope.
Okay.
Just once.
Okay.
I'll get it again in Stone Harbor, don't worry.
All right. Well, we'll do some initial thoughts on the movie. I'll start. I loved it. It was great seeing it in full theaters both times.
Yeah.
Listening to the response from the audience, the applause for Cap showed up when Thor showed up, and the gasps when characters died. And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm just desensitized to this. I was taken right by surprise.
It's not only desensitized, it's knowing they're coming back.
Right.
I mean, we know what probably will happen for the most part. I don't think the general audience who's followed these movies for 10 years does. So when they're seeing people disappear, they're like, oh my God! And we're like, all right, next movie.
I'm thinking it was mostly...
Well, I turned to Murd and I said, I whispered to them, they must not have read the Infinity Gauntlet. You know. So.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to touch on that later, because that's one of the big criticisms I read is, what's the big deal? We know there's another one coming out, and we've seen, images from the next movie. And I kept thinking, if you read the miniseries, they didn't. Some characters got killed, and it wasn't at the very end. It was in the middle of the story.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's one of the things I want to touch on, just on some of the reviews that I've read in general about the movie. But I was impressed how just like Whedon was able to take, the magic that Thor had and the technology that was in Iron Man and stuff from Cap and just merge those all into one movie. I was impressed of how well they were able to do. The Russo brothers and the writers were able to take even more franchises and intertwine them very nicely together. That nothing really seemed out of place, and nobody's tone seemed to get pushed aside as if we don't acknowledge it.
The only thing I thought that was funny with pushing characters together was you had the most egocentric characters all together. So you had Iron Man, you had Star-Lord, and you had Doctor Strange all together, all being egotistic to each other for a time. And then you had everybody else on Earth. I loved how all the secondary characters that are in these franchises got to interact a little bit. I mean, not everybody was in it, but enough were in it that it was interesting. It was fun to see.
Any initial thoughts, Adam?
That was Sophie's initial thoughts back there. Immensely entertaining, very well constructed, briskly and tightly paced. I agree with what Matt said about how every character got his or her own chance to shine, enough space to be themselves, so to speak, enough a role to play, and how the filmmakers, writer and directors both were able to be so respectful to the tone struck by so many other screenwriters and directors throughout the Marvel Studios cinematic universe. Just put together this vision while remaining respectful to the other visions that constituted panes in this quilt that they were stitching together. It was a lot of fun. Most of the characters were treated well. I will say that I would have enjoyed it more if their portrayal of Thanos had skewed a little closer to the original vision of Jim Starlin, and we'll say more about that later. But yeah, I was very satisfied with what I saw up there. It didn't feel like 2.5 hours to me, and I will, as I said earlier, see it again.
I echo a lot of Murd's sentiments. I was immensely satisfied by this film. I mean, culmination of 10 years of movie making, and in line with what everybody was saying, I thought the Russo brothers and the writers they worked with expertly brought together all of the different threads of the Marvel Universe established through these films, and everything so tightly put together. I thought every character got their moment. It was like if you put it in comic terms, it was a well done crossover.
Yeah,
and that was satisfying in its own right. And I'll differ slightly with Murd here. I love the way they interpreted Thanos for the film, and I thought this movie really should have been called Thanos: The Infinity War, because the movie's really about Thanos. And I say that as a positive, not as a negative. And I love how I've said this before on the air as we were leading up to this film. I was hoping they wouldn't skimp out on the terror of Thanos and the sheer power. And the minute he kicked the shit out of the Hulk, within 30 seconds, I was like, "Yep, this is my movie," and I was satisfied from that point forward.
And for those of you listening who took issue with the ease with which Thanos dispatched Hulk, who is, after all, the strongest one there is, just remember Thanos did have the power gem in his gauntlet at that time.
Exactly.
Would have been more of a fight otherwise.
Yeah.
All right, any other initial thoughts before we dig more deep into the movie?
very enjoyable.
Okay. A couple things I just saw online ahead of time that I don't know who said it, but I want to give credit, but I don't know who said it, that it would have been really cool to see like a moment between Doctor Strange and Iron Man, like a no shit Sherlock kind of exchange going on.
Yeah.
Emphasis on the Sherlock.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that. And again, sorry for saying shit for the third time already so far.
It's been one of those days.
Yeah. But they hit the ground running. Right after Thor Ragnarok, they sort of went into that scene on Thanos' ship, and it was just all
on the move.
All on the move from there.
Yeah.
I will say it was very interesting. Jonathan Hickman, the writer, of course, who I believe introduced these Thanos' children, I guess.
The Black Order.
The Black Order.
Comics, but I think they probably thought that name might be misconstrued in the film, so they renamed them just the Children of Thanos.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. He did create those characters.
But I loved, he tweeted out not too long ago, there's an all-encompassing Infinity War theory thread on my favorite football message board, and I just got told to fuck off because I don't know what I was talking about. So I thought that was really cool. Well, yeah, of course, there is, between comics and movies, there's different people who know different things, and everyone has their opinions and so forth, but I knew enough of Infinity War to get by. I never read it, I still enjoyed this movie thoroughly, and wasn't surprised all these people sort of dying at the end. That didn't surprise me at all.
Surprise me either.
Yeah.
And with that said, I got to see it. The plan was to take both kids in the early show, and then something happened with my younger son's schedule that we had to rearrange that. So that's how I got to see it twice in the same day, almost back to back. Both times, at the end, both kids said to me, well, I'm pretty sure they'll come back, but how are they going to win? I said, well, remember when Doctor Strange said there's one way to win?
Yes.
He put that in motion. Even though he's gone right now, I'm sure he put that in motion from what he saw, and that's where we're heading right now.
Yeah, that was the biggest takeaway and question I had is like, why did he give up the time stone, gem, whatever? And it's like, okay, that's why he did it, because he saw...
Yeah, there was no way he would do that without a plan, because he already told Tony, I would sacrifice all of you in a heartbeat if I have to protect the gem. So
It's pretty much
there's no
Thanos'
question
attitude.
that he has an end game in mind.
He saw one way to do it, and even though... And Tony may or may not know that. They may have gotten a few minutes to talk about it. And if they didn't, hey, that's fine. But if they did, it's still no less impactful for Tony to see everybody disappearing, especially when it came to Peter then, which is still why he'd be upset and felt defeated anyway, because what if he's wrong? What if something still goes wrong?
Now, I'm curious, Matt, because you're a resident guy who always reads Wikipedia for every movie before he goes to see it. Did you do that for this movie as well?
So I was curious. I haven't heard anything if there was a post-credit scene, so I at least wanted to get an idea if that was the case. Mm-hmm. And in the research of seeing if there is a post-credit scene, I saw what the post-credit scene was. Mm-hmm. And then it also happened to bring me to like the first couple minutes of the movie. So the bulk of it, I had no idea what was going on.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not that I shouldn't say I didn't know what was going on, but a lot of the things that I had a feeling was going to happen happened. And I did hear, so one of the articles that I read was, these are the key movies to probably watch before you see this. And then there was, in the same article, it said, here's some additional things that'll help, movies that you don't have to see, but it'll help fill in some of the extra things. And it said, Captain America First Avenger, to see who the hooded character is. And then when I read that, I was like, so it's either the Red Skull or it's Peggy, were my two predictions, or maybe even Erskine.
Just as an aside there real quick, Matt, that was the one moment in the movie I said out loud in the theater. The first time I saw it, I said, holy shit, against all the shits. Because I was completely stunned by that.
Yeah, that was a fantastic moment.
I actually...
Well, that was the thing. I was the exact same way. I saw the hood, and as soon as I started to hear a little bit of the voice, I went, holy shit, the Red Skull. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like Hugo Weaving, though. And then it was revealed that it was him. And I do like, because Kevin saw it before I did, and we were texting back and forth, and he said, him and I talked about when is Red Skull going to come back. And he said, something we talked about years ago, you kind of get wrapped up in here. But I like the fact that he's the keeper, I guess, of the soul gem, and since he doesn't love anybody to sacrifice, he could never get it.
Yeah.
But it also brings out with one of the issues that I had with the movie, just to throw us out there quick, is I didn't quite understand where he said he also tried to get all the stones. And it sounds as though hardly anyone knew about getting all the stones. So the fact that the Red Skull would know about getting all the stones?
I think that only happened when he got to where he was.
Okay.
I don't think that was before he was teleported off. He was only concerned with the Tesseract then. I think once he got there, that's when he started to learn about everything else. And I always figured he was out there somewhere like that, not necessarily guarding the Soul Stone or anything, but just the way First Avenger ended, there was no way he just was dispatched and destroyed. I figured he was teleported. I was just waiting for him to show up. I didn't think it would be this movie, really.
Never crossed my mind.
And is that's a space gem, right? Or a space stone?
The Tesseract? Yeah, that would have been the space gem, yeah.
Okay, so it makes sense that he would be out into space type of thing. So. But so for the bulk of it, I had no idea, aside from my suspicions about who was going to die, and I shouldn't say that because I was wrong on some of them, but kind of how things were going to play out.
Well, somebody brought up to me, I don't know if it was one of the guys when we went to see the movie or whatever, that the core Avengers, Iron Man, Thor...
Yeah, that was me, man.
Okay, yeah. Iron Man, Thor... Iron Man, Thor, Cap, Black Widow, and... Who am I forgetting?
Bruce.
Rhodes.
No, Iron Man, Hulk. Thor... Oh, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Cap, and Black Widow.
all survived.
all survived.
As
Which
did
is-
James Rhodes.
Which is what
Right.
so did Rocket for that matter.
Yeah,
but
see,
but
that-
that's where I'm thinking part of that is Doctor Strange's plan, that those had to survive in some fashion.
So we're thinking.
even though Thanos is more random in his mind, this is kind of planned.
So after Chris said that to me, my mind started thinking, okay, so this next movie may be going back to the original Avengers with the core group trying to solve this problem.
and saving everything
that-
and reversing it all.
That did come as something of a surprise to me. I mean, like the rest of you, I certainly was anticipating that half of the universe would die at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
But I thought we'd have more of an intergenerational squad of characters, like a mix of like Phase 1 and Phase 2 characters to go and try and take down Thanos in the next movie. But instead, what we get is, I didn't expect it to break down quite so neatly into newer characters dead, original squad plus Rocket Raccoon still alive.
See, I figured.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I kind of figured
I
that.
just-
So those characters,
Go ahead.
once they save the universe and reverse everything, some of those characters will go away. Whether they die, whether they retire, whether they're just not in the next batch of movies. I think you'll have Chris Evans, you'll have maybe even Robert Downey Jr., maybe one of the other ones, all just kind of fade away for a while.
Yeah, because their contracts are almost up. So
Yeah.
So for that reason, for that extra textual reason, it does make some sense that we
Yeah.
have mostly the first
And,
phase characters.
and make them the big heroes. Not that like they aren't already. I mean, they've built this universe on their backs. But once they've reversed everything, once they've beat Thanos, then everybody comes in, and it's the big Avengers group, and everybody goes out to their own franchises then again.
Well, yeah, it's a passing of the torch in that they've preserved the iconic founding Avengers, and that combined with what you said that they're moving on into sort of the next phase of Marvel movies, and Black Panther made $1 billion, and
Yeah.
that's why it was almost not. I was quietly kind of amused by him dying because I'm like, okay, there's no way he's not coming back.
Right.
They just made
Yeah.
an enormous sum of money on his films, and like Pan said, people behind us. I mean, one person must sound like they were weeping.
Oh, there was a couple
okay,
around
strangled
me.
gasps and sobs
Yeah.
coming from around the
Yeah,
theater.
and
Mostly from
that's
younger.
a testament to how much these characters people have connected to these characters. Now, again, 99% of the people who watch these movies don't read the comic books at all.
Yeah.
So we have to remember, like, this is like the cinematic universe is like their Marvel heroes essentially. And I think a lot of those viewers are approaching the films from a different perspective than we might. So I can see why seeing these characters vanish that they've been living with now for 10 years, would be shocking.
And still, at the end of the movie, I had people leaving in my theater. I just could not believe it. I even told one family this time, like, there's something else coming. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah. You ever see at the end of Marvel movies? They're like, yeah. I'm like, there's something else coming. I'm like, okay, thanks. God.
I kept thinking, is this going to be like the last season of Lost, where we think these characters survived, but we're really not seeing that they're the ones who actually aren't here, and we're
That's
actually
possible.
the people who vanished were actually the ones who survived. But I don't know. So no one has anyone heard about what the rumors are for Avengers 4?
No.
Well, I don't look at any of those kind of rumor sites. I don't want to know anything about it. All I know is that it was already filmed. As I understand it, similar to like Back to the Future, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings, it was all filmed together. And there may be some reshoots and things, but more or less it has already been filmed.
That's what I thought too. And then I listened to one video thing online, and it said that didn't happen. I'm like, well, how could it not happen? I thought that already. They said this report. Now, again, it could be wrong. Said it was too difficult to get everybody together right away to keep going for the next movie. That was the plan originally, but that's not the case. And I'm like, well, when else are you going to do it? It's coming out in a year. They've still got to go through special effects. It's got to get done.
I can tell you, I've watched enough interviews over the past 6 months to a year where some of the actors have even, and I won't tell you who because that might be some spoiler for it, but some of the actors have said they're not sure which scenes are in this movie and which scenes are in the next movie.
There you go.
Because they were
That's what I
essentially
thought.
the bulk of it was shot back to back. I think Zoe, I always mess up her last name, but
Saldana.
she said they finished wrapping this past December, and I think Chris Evans, I saw another review who said at the end of the summer he's got to go back for reshoots.
Yeah.
So the bulk of it's done. They have some reshoots to do, but I will say I won't say anything about the rumors. But the directors did say to undo what Thanos did will have a cost to it. So that kind of opens the door of will it be the original Avengers, or at least the ones whose contracts are up and aren't going to resign, who have to sacrifice themselves ultimately to undo, and then that's why they survived ultimate. But
See, and I think it's easy to say that that's probably Cap. Because there's other characters that can step right in and fill that role in a Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, Bucky could become Cap, essentially.
Absolutely.
I'm also interested to see how they bring Hawkeye back, and if we talk about our theory of the original Avengers as in terms of the first movie, that obviously he would have to return as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's conspicuously absent from this movie. So,
well, and I buy their explanation with them being on house arrest and all that. The kids said to me about the upcoming Ant-Man and Wasp. I said, well, that's going to take place before this. I have
careful.
almost no doubt.
Careful.
No.
I have not seen the new trailer that came out.
I just think that it'll take place before this, and at the end of Ant-Man and Wasp, you'll see what happens at the end of Avengers. Infinity War. Same with Captain Marvel. I think.
Well, Captain Marvel is definitely going to be in the 90s. They sort of that much,
But
unfortunately.
by the end of that, I think your little extra scene will be her getting the text from Nick Fury.
Right. Well, that's why, because
sense.
Nick Fury, before his eye patch, is going to be in Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And, that's all going to be. And yeah, we talk about spoilers, and I know Agent Coulson's in it as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I kind of expected him to show up in this for even just
So
a
did I.
little clip.
Well, that would have been a hell of an explanation, how they would have,
This movie was supposed to have everybody. After
Yeah,
all. I
and
confess to feeling a little bit gypped. We didn't get at least a quick cameo of Hawkeye, Ant-Man, the Wasp, etc.
Right, so no Hawkman, no Ant-Man, no Wasp.
No Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but there was no Valkyrie. I thought she was going to be in it.
I thought she would be in it too.
I thought Black Panther's mother was going to be in it as well.
Raymonda.
Right.
Yeah, they got the deleted scenes. Apparently, Valkyrie escaped in one of the Asgardians who escaped in an escape pod.
Okay.
well, I wanted to talk for a moment, and Murd and I talked about this when we were watching the movie. One of the things that's so pleasing about this film was they finally showed the true power set of the Scarlet Witch. Because in her first appearances, the audience is going to really get a sense of how incredibly powerful she is, and they really showed that in this film, and I was really pleased to see that.
All right, well, I want to touch now on, since I never read the comics, a little bit about some of the comic history going that maybe in the movie, maybe thought have been in the movie. And I'm going to turn to you, Adam, for this, because you mentioned before you're going to talk about it, so the floor is yours.
I stand at the ready. Oh, wait a minute. Was there a question in there? Or
well, no, because you said you wanted to come back to it, talking about...
okay, well, it is more about the character of Thanos than it is
all right,
about...
well, please enlighten us.
Okay, well... Yes, and I'm sure Chris will be happy to provide a counterpoint here. But let me start by reassuring everyone that I did like the character that they presented to us as Thanos in this film. I mean, he's layered. He's certainly not your two-dimensional world beater type. He's almost a sympathetic character. I mean, they went took long strides to make sure that he was humanized for us. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think why he spent most of the movie without his battle headdress on. Right. So you can continue to see his. Brolin may have asked for that too. I don't know for sure.
Which I got used to. I didn't think I'd like that, but I got used to that.
Well, that's one thing you always notice. Like Cap doesn't have his hood on. Yeah. Iron Man doesn't have his mask on. They have to see their faces because they're movie stars. Spider-Man because they're movie stars. You know.
I did think also, talking about Thanos and how humanizing he was, I thought the CGI on him was incredibly well done.
I will agree with that. I think it was really great all the way through. The only times when the illusion was shattered, for me at least, was when occasionally you would see Don Cheadle or Mark Ruffalo's heads poking out of their respective Iron Man armors, and they kind of looked two-dimensional, kind of like their faces had been cut out of a magazine and pasted into the suits of armor. And that was a little distracting, but that was it. And everybody else, I mean, the Black Order looked terrific. Yeah. You know, Chris and I were talking about that. They looked right out of the comics for the most part. I mean, they changed Proxima Midnight's headdress a little bit, but Corvus Glaive, the Ebony Maw, Black Dwarf, who I think they renamed as Cull Obsidian for this movie, again, because the Black Dwarf might have been misunderstood.
Yeah. I love when Tony called them all Squidward, by the way.
Oh, my God, yes.
Biggest laugh in our theater.
Yeah, that cut out a little bit of dialogue afterwards, but yeah, that happened both times I saw the movie, the laughter.
And when Chris Pratt called Thanos Grimace was also pretty.
Oh, my God. I was the only one that laughed at that. I must have been in a theater of youngsters.
McDonald Land characters are not known to the current generation of youth, I'm afraid.
Holy crap.
But it's exactly the thing Star-Lord would know, because he left Earth in the 80s when Grimace was still...
God, I felt like every eye turned on me, like, what the hell are you laughing at? I'm like, oh, God.
Which, by the way, I have to say, one of my favorite lines in the whole movie was when Star-Lord said, "Is Footloose still the greatest movie ever made?" And Peter was like, "It never was."
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we all are in agreement on that. But anyway, Thanos. Josh Brolin's portrayal was top notch. I agree with the majority on that. Certainly, there's. The only problem, I can't even really call it a problem with the character. It's just that I know I would have enjoyed this film more if they'd given us a version of Thanos that incorporated a little more of the arch villainy that Starlin imbued into his take on Thanos, which was, after all, the original. I mean, it's Thanos, as Starlin gave him to us over the years, is just much easier to hate. I mean, something of the what would be the proper word here? Necrolatry. I'm trying to think of a good word for death worship, but just his love for death as a concept and as a being. Would have been nice if they could have found some way to work that in there. What they gave us instead was basically a big purple spacefaring Adrian Veidt. This guy who's got this plan to murder a large population of the universe in order to save the half that survives. Yeah. He's got quasi-altruistic motives. I mean, granted, he's still going about it all wrong. He's still committing megadeath. He's killing half a universe to accomplish this, which is highly, highly, highly questionable. And he's not at all squeamish about killing, maiming, torturing, spilling his own adopted blood in order to get there. And I am glad, just as a side note here, that scene with the Red Skull and the Soul Gem, I'm glad that was in there. I'm glad that there was one gem Thanos had to acquire by means other than simple brute force. Yeah. Because it makes it more... talk about your comic history here. I'm thinking of the 2-issue Thanos Quest miniseries that was put out by Marvel in 1990, which detailed how Thanos hunted down each of these 6 Infinity Gems. And he had to engage in some kind of contest or battle.
Like Hercules.
Yeah, like the 12 labors.
Yeah.
Except evil. And
exactly, and only 6.
Yes, right. And he had to go up against different elders of the universe, very powerful, cunning entities. And he had to do different things to beat each one. So in this one, he was basically just punching things and using the power of the gems he already had to get and in some cases dispatching his lackeys to do it for him. I'm glad there was one challenge he had to go through to get one of the gems that involved something a little different, a personal sacrifice.
Yeah, absolutely. Something heart-wrenching to him, which I thought, oh my God, there's nothing that's going to be that. But I enjoyed how they portrayed it.
Right, and it served to humanize Thanos even further and also make him seem that much more twisted.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Thanos of the comics, I mean, he's just as complex as this, but just straightforwardly, unilaterally evil. Yeah, I wish we could have seen a little more of Thanos, the master manipulator, the cunning strategist. Really, what we got more of was Thanos, like I said, using force to get what he wants.
Yeah.
They were sort of thrusting him into the archetype of the bad father, and not only to Gamora, but to his children in the Black Order, and also to the rest of the universe. I mean, one of the things that struck me was how much bigger they made him in the movie than all the other characters, and than he is in the comics. And he's still a big being in the comics. He's like 6'7" and nearly 1,000 pounds. So he's massive, but still roughly within human proportions. The film Thanos is 10 feet tall if he's an inch. And I think maybe one of the reasons for that, well, for one thing, for the fight scene with the Hulk, make him seem a little more convincing, and the various other fight scenes in which he gets embroiled. But also, I think so that he towers above all the other sentience he encounters. So he's the bad father dealing with his willful children, trying to put them back in line and assure them this is for your own good, as a father will. I'm going to kill half of your little friends to make sure that the rest of you don't suffer and die of overpopulation or whatever Thanos' endgame really was. And I would have liked to see a little bit more explanation as to why he felt he was so convinced that this was something that he absolutely had to do, that he would kill, maim, torture, and ascend to godhood to make this happen. And I'm sure we'll see some of that in the next movie, which will be Thanos Part 2.
Well, yeah, speculate on a title for us from your comic book knowledge.
Well,
this
that's the
Infinity
thing.
War.
Right.
What do you think next one would be?
As we were leaving the theater, I told you I really hoped it would just be Infinity Crusade.
Yeah,
that's what I thought,
It just
too.
follows logically for those of us who know the Infinity Trilogy of the 90s. That was Part 3. But I think I read someplace recently that we haven't heard what the title of the next movie is going to
have not
be
at this point.
because it might constitute a form of spoiler.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if they just jump from Infinity War to Infinity Crusade, I don't think there would be much to spoil in announcing that.
Well, head scratch among the people, but
I'm still hoping for Avengers Forever.
Look at you being clever with the 4 and the thing and
It's a possibility.
There was no off position.
And then use some of that storyline
Yeah.
to, as incorporate undoing this.
What about Avengers Reborn?
That was clutch, Matt. That was clutch. Outstanding.
I'd like Forever better
Thank
than
you.
Reborn, but
Okay.
Reborn would work.
I was going to say just.
And again, that would give a spoiler too, if they're
Well, I
reborn.
mean,
But
if you're going in and thinking no one's going to be reborn, then you're silly.
oh yeah, well again, they're they're doing that for the massive amount of people that don't follow the comics and don't know what happens.
Yeah,
at the
can you
end of
imagine
everything.
the millions and millions of moviegoers if only a fraction of them went into a comic store? Like this coming weekend, Saturday is free comic book day.
They just got one trade.
And there's like a new Avengers #1 is out, I think, on Wednesday.
Just came out today.
It's like someone's thinking and doing editorial, getting all the stars aligned. Let's
Infinity Countdown #3 came out today, too.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Now,
Well, Pants, if that was the case, I'd still be open.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Alas.
No, that's okay. If I may expound for a moment on a couple themes that
please
Merv
do.
was touching on. But first and foremost, the experience we've had with this movie, which again I've thoroughly loved, and I'll probably see it a third time before it leaves the theater, is that, and the reaction of the audience emphasizes, I don't mean this to be a downer, but nobody's reading the comics. I mean, percentage-wise, nobody. So this movie universe is almost like an entity unto itself at this point. I think the audience reaction is an example of that.
Yeah, which is fine and dandy.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I'm not lamenting. I'm just saying that's just the reality. But for Thanos to respond to what Murd was saying, in essence, I agree with Murd in that I would have loved to see that Starlin take, but I think the reason they couldn't do that is because, for whatever reason, they didn't build Thanos up throughout all the other movies. You only saw him very briefly in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then prior to that quick cameo in the first Avengers film. So the audience has no basis really for this character beyond the few quick moments they've seen him. So I think to introduce the whole Starlin-esque, the fixation on death, I think it would have been too complicated in one film for the general audience to really grasp. I don't mean that in a condescending way, just that takes more than one movie to really explain all of that. So I think the way they went about it worked in the context of the MCU and this. And furthermore, I agree. Brolin was amazing. Like his voice. I mean, he's a great actor, but his mannerisms, the motion capture performance was spot on. What I also really loved was, and we talked about the size of Thanos, and he's right. Like he's not that big in the comics, but I think that just emphasized really the sheer futility in this movie of the heroes trying to take him down. I mean, for me, one of the key scenes is when he appears in Wakanda, and this really gave me chills in that there was no more noise. The birds stopped. You just see like a bit of wind, people's hair moving. It's just utter silence. Like the sheer anticipation of like this force that's coming that no one really can stop. And then he appears. And for me, the defining moment, Captain America is swatted away like a fly, basically. Yeah. When he tries to grab the fist and he just punches him away. And that's what I wanted to say. I wanted them to, and I'm so glad that they didn't pull back. They didn't, wuss out. They showed just how powerful this entity is and how that really nobody had any chance at all to stop him, at least in this film. And I want to ask Murd, do you think in the second film it's going to come down to, like in the comic, really Thanos defeating himself?
I would certainly like to see that. For the film-going audience, though, I think it's going to be more the spirit of humanity triumphing over this seemingly undefeatable, invincible, inexorable force of death and destruction. But yeah, it would be nice if they could introduce that fatal flaw of self-defeat of Thanos. But as you said, Chris, and it's a very good point you make, there are so many layers to Starlin's Thanos that they just can't lay out in the space of one or even two movies.
Well, I think go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Proceed. No, I was going to say, I think, Murd, to piggyback what you're saying, I think the way they use the child incarnation of Gamora, which I'm assuming is in the Soul Gem, that's where that might be sort of their in to further exploring that character and the layers as you're describing. Possibly, it's just a guess on my point, but on my part.
That's a good point. I like that with Gamora being in the Soul Gem as the conscience of him now. He's got what he wants. He's won, and yet here's this little voice saying, "Well, what did it cost you? What did you do? How did you?" Well, okay,
that's a cost in itself. I mean, this is something that goes back to the very earliest days of the Infinity Gems in the Marvel Universe. The Soul Gem was the first one that ever appeared, and at first nobody really knew that there were any more. Adam Warlock had it. It was like bonded, like symbiotically to his forehead, and it had a sentience of its own and kind of a malign divine sentient. It was like a vampire. It longed to absorb the souls of others. And so now Thanos has to cope with that, and the one particular soul that's trapped in there, the one that's in the best position to torment him in his new position of godhood. So yeah, I agree, Shane. That would be nice to see the interplay between this innocent child, this life that Thanos sacrificed to his grand cosmic goal, to asking him, so is it worth it, Chief?
I wasn't sure what kind of Thanos we get either until the scene with the young Gamora. And I was surprised they wrote him like this, but it makes sense with how the rest of the movie progressed, where he gives her the blade and he's teaching her how to balance it, and she's trying it, and all the gunfire starts in the back, and she goes to turn her head, and he goes, no, and focuses her away from all the devastation, away from her mother being murdered, to just focus on him. Whereas I think the other Thanos from the comic would not have done that.
Oh, no, he would have done exactly the opposite. He would have encouraged her to watch.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, well, this is a completely different Thanos than what I thought we were going to get, so let's see where we go from here. Yeah. And it worked.
And his motives in that scene were pretty opaque to me, even as I was watching it. So hopefully this is another thing that they'll get into. And this is, between you and Chris, we've tapped into a great idea here for something that could be like a convention of the next movie. Thanos being in the Soul Gem, and we learn about his past that way. We learn about his motives that way. I'm liking the sound of this. Yeah. I hope Marvel's listening.
I did want to say just that scene with Cap going up against Thanos, it was more of a letdown than I was hoping. One of the scenes that really got me jazzed for the movie was in the trailer where he grabs onto the gauntlet and is struggling to hold it. So I kept envisioning this scene's going to be like his death or something monumental. And it just seemed to be like a quick moment type of thing where just in the midst of a bunch of characters fighting Thanos. And then when he got punched and swatted away, I thought, we just saw him die. And then to see that he was okay, it was just kind of like, that one moment I was really looking forward to kind of was just a nothing moment.
Yeah, because he really got slim. I thought he was dead too. I really thought he was. I also thought Tony was going to die when Thanos ran him through, and that's when Doctor Strange stepped in.
Yep.
Now, I went into this movie again not seeing any of the trailers. I might have heard a few things just being other movies. But I watched it afterwards, and my big takeaway was they didn't have the Hulk appearing in Wakanda out of the Hulkbuster armor. Mm-hmm. Does anybody know? No, I know that the Hulk. Well, first of all, I was really cool with the Hulk not wanting to come out.
Yeah,
it's clearly he's different. He said, "I lost it. I'm not getting involved with Thanos again. I don't care what's at stake. No, I'm out. Good night, everybody."
He's Hulkilles sulking in his tent.
Right. That was really odd. But what do we think of not seeing the Hulk really appear?
I was surprised.
Go ahead.
I was just surprised by it. I thought we'd see him at the last minute somewhere along the way. Like
I thought it was a great bait and switch.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I liked about it is it's continuing this Banner's arc. Even though I thought he seemed more like comic relief in this movie, which was kind of, aside from Ragnarok, you didn't really. That wasn't really the character. So that kind of was one of the things I didn't like is the comic relief aspect. But I liked how you're seeing, according to Ruffalo, between Ragnarok, this movie, and 4, there's going to be a specific Hulk story arc going on in the movie, and it's interesting to see Banner basically in the field now himself taking on these challenges. So I liked the idea, not necessarily the execution, with him being the comic relief of it.
Right.
I loved it because, again, it showed just the awesome power of Thanos when he has possession of the gems, and how Murd, I loved, by the way, your Achilles reference, by the way, but how Banner,
I'll take credit,
how Banner, and the Hulk, I should say, he's traumatized. Like the Hulk has really basically never backed down from anything he's fought, and now he's afraid. Like he's afraid, right? He was decisively beaten handily in really seconds. So he doesn't want to come out. So I can't wait to see how they play with that. We also have to remember how Banner's so brilliant that even when he's not the Hulk, he plays such an integral role in whatever mission they're on. So,
do you think that by the end of this we'll get a Hulk that is more intelligent? As
I was thinking that too, Shane.
In the comics, he progresses and can talk at some point.
Well, yeah, because he was quite chatty in Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Ruffalo is now playing both parts anyway. So.
Yeah. And I read that he's supposed to be about 5 years old in this movie. I think the last one he was supposed to be about 2, and this one it's estimated that the Hulk's mindset is of a 5-year-old. Which having a 5-year-old isn't really a good age.
You know nothing about that,
And a
would you?
2-year-old.
Yeah, the 2-year-old.
I'm not unhappy to be past that.
I wanted to point out for a moment, for me, one of the most exciting... We talk about scenes that are very akin to the comic. Two scenes that really got me jazzed. I mentioned these to Murd when we were watching. First of all, when all the heroes are sort of fighting Thanos on Titan, they're all kind of clinging to him, and Mantis is on his head. I was like, Murd, that's like a Starlin splash page. Like, they clearly emulated that style in that fight scene. And then the other thing that really... I was just had a huge grin on my face. The Doctor Strange Thanos fight was so Ditko, with the multiple Doctor Stranges and then like the mirror images he created as a barrier. I was just thrilled by that because that's right from the books in those scenes.
Talking of favorite
I wanted to say...
Go ahead, Matt.
go ahead.
No, you
I was
first.
just going to say... from everything I hear, there's supposed to be a sequel to Doctor Strange. I haven't heard too much of it, but I guess the director isn't signed, but he has a script and everything. But he was one of the characters I was most fascinated with in this movie. I thought this was way better than his solo movie, and I know that was an origin. But I liked I liked the way he interacted with Tony. I liked you got to see a lot of his powers. I'm not sure what the time frame would have been that passed, but he seemed a lot more experienced, so it wasn't one of these making a lot of mistakes. But he was one of the characters that I wasn't interested in really going into this, but by the end of it, I really liked how he was presented in the movie.
All right. If it won you over to the mystical side of the Marvel Universe, that's an accomplishment.
You know,
To some degree.
I don't think there's any actor that's been chosen to portray a character and any origin movie or continuation that I've really been disappointed with completely. I mean, the only one I never saw in the theater was the first Thor. And it is one of my least favorites. It's not bad.
It's one of my favorites.
I just prefer
My
other
favorites,
ones. I like Thor 2 and 3 better than 1. But that's just me. It's not that it's bad. It's just I rank it a little differently. But casting and the way stories flow, there's not any that I'm like, I don't really think I want to see that one. It doesn't look that good, or that actor's just completely wrong. Man, when I heard Benedict Cumberbatch was going to be Doctor Strange, I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. Just every time they choose someone and you see just a little trailer or you get to see it in the movie, I'm like, nope, they hit it out of the ballpark. There's just, I don't know how they keep getting these people to do this stuff and choosing the right things, and it's just all working. It's almost perfect.
I think that goes back to, and this is why I'm so in awe of Marvel and Disney have achieved with these films, is that they never forget the source material. Even though they obviously change things for the movie universe, for every film to varying degrees, but for the most part, I'd say consistently, the essence of the comic books are there. And granted, there are things that we will appreciate that maybe someone who's not doesn't read them may not notice, or they get something different out of it. But they really, all the actors they've cast, it's clear that the people involved in the script writing, the directing, like they're going right to the source material. And that's why I think this is so satisfying. I think it's also why it's working for the general audience, because let's face it, the Marvel Universe, when it was created, it was so radical in the 1960s in the way they approached superheroes. And now we're just getting that spirit in now since they have the special effects technology in the cinematic world, and it's why it works so well. Like, for example, when Doctor Strange is chiding Wong about going to the deli and not having money, right? Like, it's a quick little funny scene, but that's why Marvel's great, and that's why it was so great and so refreshing in the Silver Age. And that spirit is now in these films. It's so fresh again because it's a different medium for it. But and I love DC too, but I'm sorry, they just don't have that. Like, they don't have. It's a different approach, and it's just a different feel. And I love that too, but Marvel just has that. They have that interaction with the characters that just works so well and humanizes them.
Sidebar: as of Monday, at the end of Monday, this movie has done more in the couple days it was out than the entire worldwide release of Justice League.
I believe that.
And they're eyeing $1 billion by the end of the week.
Oh, yeah, that's Boffo box office. I mean, it was sold out almost every screening. I mean, I had never been to a screening recently where there's been that many people in the theater. And it's
really?
Yeah, I mean, just crazy.
Well, I want to jump on about with the radical notion with Marvel and when it was first coming out. some of the stuff I've been reading is, is anyone else kind of convinced that some of the people reviewing these movies just aren't interested in this genre or really familiar with comic books whatsoever?
Yeah.
They're totally not familiar with comic books.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, some of their criticisms are valid, and I don't put a lot of stock in them anyway. I'm just curious to see what kind of like the other side sees of them. But a lot of the stuff I read was that these deaths wound up are nothing because we know there's another one coming out. These movies don't end; they just lead you into the next one. It's too serialized. The big one that really took me is that this movie isn't really inviting for people who haven't seen any of the previous MCU movies. And Adam and I were talking about this. What are the chances? What's the number? What's the percentage of people who never saw any of the MCU movies, or maybe one or two, and like, you know what, I want to go see that movie? Because they're saying there should have been a previously in the MCU type of couple scenes just to kind of bring you up why Cap is bearded and he's not with Iron Man and the Avengers are apart and who this person is and stuff like that. But that's one of the things I liked about this movie is it was basically a ride. As soon as it started, you were sitting there, you were locked in until the very end. There wasn't really any I didn't think there was any type of lulls. There wasn't anything like, do we really need to go over this again? It's basically, you know this. The bulk of the audience is going to know this, so let's just run with it.
Well, I mean, they've been on video and DVD and TV. Streaming and TV forever and ever. Well, there's been theaters who've been showing marathons ahead of time. Yeah, I think it's out there.
I think in this case, you have 18 movies that built this up, and they do a fantastic job of, if you didn't see one, they give you a little explanation in two of what happened in one, or whatever the case may be. I think it's okay in this one instance out of 18 previous movies. This time, they don't explain anything. You can still enjoy it. You can still get it. You jump right in. They don't need to explain everything because they're giving you 18 movies to do that and 1,000 different ways to view them.
There was one scene where I thought on one level it worked, but if you knew the other movies it really worked. The scene between Star-Lord and Gamora, when she said, "Swear on your mother."
Yeah.
Yeah,
now,
that's great.
when she said that, we know what that meant to him. But if you didn't, you probably would still get some idea. But that was a more powerful moment knowing the other movies.
But then, if you don't know, you go and you see that and you wonder what it is, you go back and you watch the movie, then it hits you again. Because now, oh my God, now it means even more.
I thought the Guardians were used really effectively in the film. They were nice, because, they haven't interacted with the other characters yet.
Yeah.
But I thought they were they added to the film. It was seamless. The humor was still there, like Drax saying, like, no one can see me while he's eating the snack food. Hilarious. Like they were. What was great about this, you guys already mentioned this in different ways, that they retained the feel of all the different franchises and all the different characters. Yeah. And again, this is great writing and directing, and they all melded together. Like you guys mentioned, I thought it was a great point that they put all the egomaniacs together, like all the egotistical characters together, and it was fun watching them all, try to outdo each other and argue, and that's Marvel, right? Like that's at its best. That's what Marvel is. It's these heroes with boots of clay who you see their warts and all, even as they're doing the heroic thing.
And you had, of course, the old trope when you first meeting. They're fighting with Iron Man, the Spider-Man, and the Guardians all fighting together. Yeah, so yeah. What master do you serve? That was just. He goes, wait a minute. That was.
What am I supposed to say? Jesus?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, you're from Earth?
No, I'm from Missouri.
Yeah, that's on Earth, dumbass. Wait,
yeah, dipshit. Did you find this is another one of the criticisms that I read? Do you find that the humor tone deaf when it was used? I thought it was appropriate. It didn't seem like Ragnarok where there was a plethora of jokes, but I thought it was well timed when it was used. It wasn't overly done.
No, I thought
but it was in there enough that you were like, okay, these are how the characters are going to react because these are the characters and what they do.
Can I get your gun? No. Well, can I get your arm? Oh, I'm going to get that arm.
I'm going to get that arm.
Now, here's to take it a step further for what we're talking about. I have a coworker who knows my love of comics and everything, knows I've watched these movies countless times.
Listened to them dozens of times at work.
Yeah. Says to me, and yeah, because she was at my old job.
Right, I know.
And says to me, my husband and I might go see this movie. What do I have to look for if I want to watch something before it? And I have a list inside my one drawer at work. It's an overhead thing, and I had it at the old place too, of the release dates of all the movies typed out. So I took that off, I photocopied it, and I started highlighting things like, well, these are the ones you should watch. Here's what you could watch if you want more, but you don't have to. Here's what you really need to watch to get here, and here's why this is, this, and this is. And I ran it over to her on my break, and she goes, did you just do this now? I'm like, no, I had it. I didn't take up work time to do it. I already had it. I just keep it around, and it just served perfectly here. Here's what you can look at. Here's what you want to watch. But if you don't watch them, you can go in and enjoy the movie and then catch up later. You'll get the same impact out of them eventually. You might even – you'll see stuff in this one. You're like, oh, well, why are they doing that? But then you'll go back and watch the movies in order or even out of order, and you'll still be like, oh, my God. Well, that means so much more now from Avengers Infinity War. So it was a funny conversation to have with her. Did you do this now? No. But here's all the movies you need to watch.
Gentlemen, go ahead. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Oh no. Well, before you go, what would you rank? How would you give this, Chris? To make sure that's on the record.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say. Oh, it's 5 frickin' swears. That's without hesitation. To me, this is and I'm anticipating with the second part. This is like the perfect culmination of what they've been building towards for when these movies started. So I'm. As a I'm a Marvel zombie more or less throughout my life, and I'm eminently satisfied. The other point I want to make before I depart, and Mert and I talked about this after the film when we saw it, is I love the last scene with Thanos, which is right out of the Infinity Gauntlet, where he's just sitting there on his farm. Mert, do they have the armor on the Scarecrow?
I couldn't tell if the armor was on it, but the Scarecrow was definitely present, and that was an important image because it's Thanos retiring from the life of godhood and tending his own garden for a time in an obscure corner of the universe, and he puts his old battle armor on a Scarecrow. And that's the first image you see in the first issue of the Infinity War miniseries. So I'm very glad that they worked that in there. So talk about something else, as Chris said earlier, about how this movie and the many others in the Marvel film dynasty are showing due respect to the source material. That last scene was a great example.
Yeah, and that's what I thrilled me just to and again I would let them know what just the general audience who are not into comics how they reacted to that scene, because it's not like when you have Captain America just at the end going, oh God, just sitting on the ground in despair in front of the inert shell of the Vision, and you just realize the heroes at their lowest dead. Like, this is Empire Strikes Back, right? And then to see Thanos in just 10 minutes after he's committed this just horrific act of just, mass extermination. It's, what a great way to end it. Gentlemen, I have to depart. But, Matt, it was great to have you in the trenches with us this time.
Oh, I'm always happy to be here when I can.
Indeed. And, brothers, I will talk to you all very soon.
See you, Chris.
Sir.
All right.
Take it
Wakanda
easy.
forever. Wakanda forever. Good night, all.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
I want to.
I do want to throw a couple things out there because
Sure.
probably within the next 15, 20 minutes I'm going to have to go myself. But
Sure.
I liked how Groot was very immature, and it was kind of seeing everything that Thor was going through, that he kind of got inspired to essentially grow up.
Yeah.
I thought that was a neat arc for him, which initially I didn't quite get, in the previews how he was just, put that away, and then I realized how much he's just playing with that game throughout the whole thing, like he doesn't really care. So I thought that was very cool that it wasn't one of the Guardians, but it was Thor that kind of inspired him to start taking things seriously to some extent.
Yeah. During those Groot scenes, Matt, I looked over at Chris in the theater, and he just kind of smirked and said, "Yeah, that's my life."
I kind of thought when they showed that he was playing Defender, I thought, well, maybe he's going to take over a ship and start battling things. I thought that's where they're leading with showing the game.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Groot's game.
That's what a lot of these famous are going through. That was a funny moment when you said
Yeah.
that. You like that
sure
too,
is.
Shane?
Yeah, we get it too.
That's what you can accomplish when you get your face out of that video game. You
Yeah.
can create a god-killing super weapon.
There you
Oh,
go.
all right. So let's talk about that scene because we haven't yet, where they build that weapon.
How about Peter Dinklage?
Oh my God, was that awesome?
How about them being being a giant in this?
Yeah, yeah.
But he's still a dwarf, though. He's
Yeah.
a 14-foot tall Asgardian dwarf.
That's right.
Nidavellir is actually one of the 9 realms of the Asgardian cosmology.
Now, I also thought that the design of that workshop and what happened when the lights went on, when they got the energy flowing through, was very Kirby-esque as well. The way it was built and looked and just affected, it was a lot of fun to watch. I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. It was really neat. thought they did it well. I couldn't believe that was him. I had no idea he was even in the movie. Oh, that was great.
That was a big surprise for me, too.
Nor did I. Again,
Everyone kept thinking it was going to be Pip.
Oh, okay.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, I would have liked to see Pip or Moondragon. She's got to show up at some point.
Help me out, Pip.
Pip the Troll, one of Warlock's friends. He's from Jim Starlin's original run back in Strange Tales and the Warlock solo series.
Speaking of Warlock, in the reality-changing scene on Nowhere, was that focused on the husk, the cocoon, if you will? That
No.
What was I thinking of then?
I think it might have been in the background.
It was
one
a
of the scenes.
cocoon.
I thought I
The
saw
cocoon,
it.
right?
But it wasn't. I don't think it was what Adam Warlock's coming out of from what we saw at the end of Guardians
I think
2.
he's supposed to be in the third Guardians movie.
Yeah.
And as I said, Moondragon's got to show up at some point because in the comics continuity, she's Drax's daughter after all. So that would be perfect. Oh, and as a side note, related to Drax, I mentioned Infinity Countdown #3 came out today. It features a scene in which Drax uses the power gem in concert with a saxophone. They remembered that Drax, in his human identity as Arthur Douglas, was a saxophone player on the side, like moonlighted as a jazz musician. And they actually used that.
Wait, like Nightman.
Way to slip the Ultraverse in there, Matt, since that is technically a part of the Marvel multiverse now. But yeah, kind of. Except he died and became like a cosmic assassin, and really didn't have much time to pick up the old horn much after that. But he did in that comic. But yeah, that scene in Nowhere too. When you were talking about the obtrusiveness of humor, Matt, that was. Thanos even got in on the act in that scene. I guess he was making an incursion into the Guardians' little corner of the Marvel Universe and thought it was appropriate to use the reality gem to... he could have just made Drax and Mantis vanish or evaporate or turn them to stone. Instead, he decided to make their bodies fall apart in horrific but cartoonish and kind of funny ways.
Yeah.
Turned the Star-Lord's laser blaster into a soap bubble gun.
And someone had said to me, I don't remember if it was one of you guys in an email or if it was outside of this, or if I saw it on Facebook even, trying to go through the characters that didn't die as a result of Thanos snapping his fingers, that died before that, in essence. You had Gamora, Vision, Loki,
Heimdall.
And somebody said the Collector, and I'm like, well, you can assume that, but we don't know that because we saw the illusion. We didn't see what actually happened to him.
He is an elder of the universe, so he's functionally immortal.
Yeah. So... to go along with that, I know in the comic book it gets reversed and everything that was done gets undone, but the same thing will happen here, but they're going to have to take it a step further depending on how the outcome is to bring those characters back because they didn't die from the wiping of the stones and the gauntlet and snapping the fingers. They died before that. So I'm going with, well, they'll be brought back because they were still affected by the pursuit of the stones. There was a stone involved in everybody's death.
No, they could just resurrect anybody who's ever died in any of these movies.
Oh, absolutely.
If the Infinity Gems are involved, anything is possible.
But someone said, well, I don't think they'll come back. I'm like, no, they'll come back.
Yellow Jacket could come back. What the heck?
Yeah. And someone started to argue with him, like, no, they'll be back because they'll just undo everything, including that, because that was part of the whole impetus of getting the stones and getting the gauntlet together. So they will be back, and kind of sideways, I'm like, there's a Guardians 3, there's a Black Panther 2. I mean, they're going to come back. Don't worry about that.
That's why I keep saying that I think it's mainly the younger theater goers who are gasping and sobbing at the deaths of these characters because they are still too callow and too unfamiliar with the ways of the media world to realize that these characters, as long as they can make money for their parent company, will not be allowed to stay dead.
I had to laugh at the screening I was at before we went to go see with Chris and Adam. Well, first of all, some guy at the very beginning started going, "Avengers Assemble!" And it pretty much fell on deaf ears. People were like, "Come on!" And so,
but nobody in the theater reads the comics, and
right? Exactly.
But
then at the end of the movie, with that whole, which we didn't touch on yet, with the whole thing with what's on the pager. Someone said, well, what's that? And someone else goes, oh, it's Captain Marvel. And then someone said, read a comics!
All right. So here's something I can be proud of for my older boy. I saw it with him Saturday morning. I ordered tickets weeks and weeks before.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
And then he got invited with a friend, two school friends, to go see it Friday night. He's like, well, I'm going to go see it. I'm like, I don't care. Just don't spoil anything. And I said, you stay one iota of what happens. I'm going to take every electronic you own away for an indeterminate amount of time. And he kind of rolled his eyes and laughed at me. But after I saw it, and he kept quiet the whole thing, even making a joke like, "Oh, Nick Fury's not in it yet," and "Oh, I couldn't believe he wasn't in it," while the credits are rolling, knowing that was the extra scene, that little sucker. But that was great. That was great.
Sacrifice him to the Soul Gem.
Yeah, it was good. After we got in the car and we're talking about Captain Marvel a little bit, he goes, "You know what? I didn't know who that was," and he wouldn't, and that's fine. He said, "But we were talking about the three of them." And they started Googling it. They started reading up on history of it. They started reading how this character interacted with this character. But I was impressed that they went and sought out what that symbol was. They did stuff like Google Marvel character Infinity War scene and came to Captain Marvel.
Because what would you guess the percentage of moviegoers in the theater you were at knew it was happening?
Oh, yeah, none.
I'm sure there are tons of news and hype sites all over the internet that are just tripping over themselves to tell everyone.
Right, because like I said, when I was in the theater, people were yelling out loud, "What was that?" And someone said, well, it was, because most people just didn't know what it was.
But remember when we went to see the first Avengers movie and we saw that image of Thanos with that big cocky Starlin grin on his face, and Danny yelled out, "It's Darkseid!" And people in the theater believed her. Oh, that guy's name's Darkseid?
Oh, jeez.
But I was impressed that they thought and wanted to find out more about that. Like sometimes when I see it with the kids, they enjoy it and they love it and they'll watch it again, but they don't want any more than that. But yet here, they get to the end of this, they get to the scene, and Ben's like, "Oh, God, who's that? I want to find out who that is." And they start looking for it right away. I'm like,
okay,
right.
So besides Captain Marvel, who do we think will appear in the Avengers movie next that we haven't seen before as far as characters go?
At all before?
At all in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because
Like
but would it be a cheat for these new characters to come in who we haven't seen at all before?
It doesn't seem like the time to introduce new
I don't,
characters.
I don't think you'll see many, if any. I think you'll see
maybe one or two.
More of the...
It's kind of an all-hands-on-deck
Right, because
kind of
you
thing.
mentioned Adam Warlock, who he's been teased at.
Yeah, that he needs kind of a whole movie that'll be just about him.
I don't think he'll show up in the next one. I think, given what happens to him in Infinity Gauntlet, I think he won't be in the next one. I think he'll be reserved for Guardians 3, and that's where he'll come in. I don't think you'll see many new ones in here. It's a time for all hands on deck, but all hands on deck for everybody that we've already met. It's time for the original Avengers to possibly take a step back at the end of this, and everybody else who is going to now be an Avenger to step forefront. You're going to have this great big scene, I would imagine, towards the end of it, at a big climax where they all yell, "Avengers Assemble!" I think you're going to get all that. I just don't think you'll get many new characters. I think the next phase will start introducing new characters.
No, they might introduce one. I mean, that's how we got Spider-Man as part of Civil War. They might pull one new character out of their hats. But.
And even one of maybe 4 would be nice to see if that was even a possibility, but I don't think it will be.
Oh, you mean as in Fantastic Four?
Yeah. Because that's who I think... Not that they intentionally planned it this way and maybe they laid the seed for a possibility. Whether it does or doesn't happen, I still would like to think that there's in Spider-Man Homecoming, when Tony sold Avengers Tower, it was to become the Baxter Building.
Oh my God! Never thought about that.
I mean, what you kind of
you
vacate?
Just blew my mind, sir.
You vacate New York to get away and get the destruction away.
There's still this giant building.
There's still this giant building there that would serve perfectly as the Baxter Building, or what is it, Four Freedoms Plaza?
Yeah,
that would work too.
Which blew up in the original Infinity War miniseries.
Yeah, so. If you get all that legality stuff taken out of it and you figure out how to do it now that Fox is sort of going to be under Disney with them buying it and all that stuff, I mean, I don't know what intricacies there are to now that because Disney bought Fox. And
They're trying to.
It's
not finalized.
If that happens, then how hard is it to get all that stuff back into the Marvel Universe? But that's what I thought would be great. Again, even if they just planted the seed for a possibility, and then down the road say, "Oh yeah, that's when I sold that. It was to this guy Reed." So, go ahead.
I was gonna say I've been thinking for a while that if they introduce Fantastic Four, say like the post credit scene of the next one, at least a hint towards it, you could essentially start to weed out the core Avengers and make the next story arc that you're gonna do kind of the Fantastic Four as the central group. Because you think about how many of the characters that are established have some type of relationship with the Fantastic Four. I mean, Spidey, Doctor Strange, you could just go down a list. So you can almost have them kind of fill that void that if you start taking away the Avengers, more or less, that they could easily take up and keep moving forward. Plus, you have Doctor Doom, who, if they don't ruin him in the first Fantastic Four movie, they could essentially build him up as kind of like a Thanos type character, or you can play with all the other ones that are in the Fantastic Four universe.
You could bring in Galactus to be the next world-bearing destroyer. You could even just go right from, with Fantastic Four, you could go and do Secret Invasion. You could do almost anything and give it a similar take on what you've built up to. Just, again, making FF the more central group with the Avengers.
Plus, you have X-Men, too, to play with.
Now, was I being naive in not knowing that Hawkeye and Ant-Man were not in this movie?
That came
they
as
were cut.
it came as a kind of a disappointing surprise to me, too.
Yeah, I thought they'd show up at some point.
Okay, I didn't know because, like I said, it permits to avoid all kind of spoilers.
I expected them to be in it. I was surprised they weren't.
Okay, Matt, you say they were cut?
Yeah, because a lot of people were upset. But one of the articles that I read before I saw it is that their scenes kind of got cut from the final movie, which I was at least glad they mentioned where they are and what happened to them. But their scenes got cut.
And I accept their explanation of it well enough too.
Sure, they're the only members that I know of who really have families,
right,
of the Avengers. But I mean, I know we'll see Ant-Man and the Wasp coming up in July. And
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah,
but
don't
boy,
say.
That trailer looked fantastic.
Well, I can watch Evangeline Lilly all day long.
I've got
it takes
that
two to make a thing go right.
Oh my god!
Hey, stop it!
It's hilarious.
What the hell are you guys trying to pull here?
I've got
that was the music in the.
I'll turn your mics
trailer.
down. I'll turn your mic down. There you go.
That first little trailer with whatever song and beat that has been running through my head all week.
Adamant. It's an Adamant song.
Well, and I wondered if they used part of that for the Solo trailer too. I want to get them and watch them kind of simultaneously.
Well, do it on your own time, sir.
I will.
Well, that doesn't ruin the movie by saying what music.
I don't want to know nothing about nothing, sir.
That new
What did you
trailer
guys
just
think
looks
about
awesome.
the Wakandan battle or the fight in Wakanda?
I like that it wasn't in. I mean, there was enough happening, and enough has happened in New York. I was glad to see something happening somewhere far away from anything except Wakanda.
So there would be like collateral damage, like buildings, that kind of thing? Okay.
Like everything's culminating there. They have the technology that could help prevent things from progressing quickly. It was the best place to have that battle since it had to happen.
I like the scene where Shuri showed up Bruce Banner.
Oh, God,
Well,
that was great.
I didn't think about it, but I liked how it played out. Where they're running, where the group is running towards those riders or whatever they were called.
Outriders, yeah.
And you see everyone running, and all of a sudden Cap and or Steve and Black Panther are leading ahead of everybody else. And it's like, oh, that's right, they are enhanced, so they would be the first ones to kind of jump into the fray.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that was very well done. Just a little extra thing that makes complete sense when you see it, but I don't know if they didn't do it that way, you wouldn't really notice it because they would have been running with everybody else. But it was just a great little thing to show how powerful they are and how ready they are to defend not only Black Panther with Wakanda, but really the world for him, for just opening Wakanda up to the world. It was good.
Oh, go ahead. The other thing, and I have to admit, I completely forgot about him, but when I'm watching, all of a sudden, Thor, Groot, and Rocket appear. At first I was like, oh man, now what's happening? Is this where Thanos shows up? And then I was like, oh, that's right, Thor's in this movie too. So just kind of see him show up and then take out, and I kind of like that. I am Groot, I am Steve Rogers, and you got a haircut, you copied my beard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that scene I think was where we had the loudest applause in the theater both times when Thor appeared.
I had
Cap was a close second behind when he came out of the shadows.
That was in the first viewing I had. That was the biggest one that we had was when Cap came out, and I was like, who's behind there in the shadow? It didn't even dawn on me that was Cap. I was expecting something else to come out of there. I don't know what, but then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. It's Cap, son of a gun. I should have thought of that. But that was a great scene too. I love the interaction between Vision and Wanda. I thought that was very touching, all the way through, from the beginning right through the end. Every time they were on screen together, I thought they were very, very believable, very well done, very deserved of what they were doing.
The things I didn't care for so much was I didn't care for when Peter died. I thought that was over dramatic and long. I didn't care for Black Widow's new look. I thought Peter or Spider-Man's written better in Civil War and this movie, aside from when he died and when him and Tony are kind of having that argument of, hey, you shouldn't be here, should have left, much more than the dialogue that he had in his solo movie. So I hope that these guys, the writers for this movie, wear off on the writers for the sequel to kind of make his dialogue a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm with you there on the subject of the Tom Holland Spider-Man, Matt. It's an interesting dynamic that Tony and the Robert Downey Tony and that Spider-Man have on screen. I just kind of wish. I mean, it's fun to listen to, but I wish it were somewhat different because Spider-Man shouldn't be like a little intern to Tony Stark. You know, his motivations are different, and poor Uncle Ben has been kind of swept under the rug. But I agree with you that the way he was written in his solo movie Homecoming didn't do much for me, and I'd like to maybe see some other people than people who used to be on Freaks and Geeks be involved in the next movie there.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I enjoyed Homecoming well enough, and I didn't think it was that bad. I certainly liked the dialogue in the movie better, I think, than both of you, the way it sounds. But I wouldn't mind that either if it was a step up from that come the next Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, it won't be precisely the same tone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think I've heard rumors that it involves him traveling beyond the context of... Well, then,
sitting right here.
well, take off your headphones for a second.
Well,
He's leaving New York for a while.
no!
There.
I also
He did in Homecoming.
I didn't think
Well, going a little further afield than a field trip to
Yeah.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I didn't think that... I will agree, Matt, that I thought it was odd about how slow Peter died compared to everybody else. But I didn't mind the dialogue between them. And that was, again, even if Tony knows what's going to happen or what should happen based on what Doctor Strange did, you still have this heart-wrenching thing where, just like in what he said in Homecoming, it's on him now that Peter died. If good or bad, if it doesn't work out, it's all on Tony for that because he really brought him in when he probably shouldn't have, but he did.
And that scene, I think, got the biggest amount of gasps in the screenings that I saw.
Yeah.
People were like, oh my God. Afterwards, are people saying that really got to them? I'm like, yeah. Okay. See, that didn't get to me at all because I know that they're not going to die. I get that. But it's interesting to see a different perspective from a non-necessarily comic book fan. Maybe it's a heartfelt. I don't know. I don't get it.
I did think it was touching. I like the father-sonish kind of thing that came out. But then again, we all know I'm sappy for that. So I didn't mind it in that one. But yeah, I didn't. It wasn't like I think he's gone because that's just ludicrous to think.
Yeah.
Hey, I got to get going in another minute or so. I did want to throw something. It wasn't something I liked. This wasn't something I disliked. I chuckled at the irony of the line that was in there about when we opened up Wakanda. This isn't what I had in mind, and she said maybe a Starbucks.
Yeah.
So after what happened in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago, I thought that's kind of funny that you would say Starbucks in there. So I kind of chuckled at the irony of that. But I would put this as 5, but I still can't put it as the top in the group. I know we're not ranking them, but it's easily within the top 5, but I still can't put it as the top. And a lot of crack there. The last thing
So
I
what
want
is
to
your
add
top, then?
before I pardon.
What is your top then?
No, save that for the ranking.
Oh, all right.
Well, it's been the same thing, so it's no big deal.
All right,
Winter
all right.
Soldier
Okay.
is still the top for me. But before I go, I did want to say we're recording this on May 2nd, which is the 4-year anniversary of Jamie's passing. So just a quick throw that out there. And I came to realize that he's trolling me because 5-2 is today. His team beat my team in the Super Bowl, which the 52nd Super Bowl. So he's trolling me. And when I text Sean about that today, she said he's looking down, smiling on me, knowing that. And I advised that I'm looking skyward, flipping him the bird because of that. So, hey, it was great talking with you guys.
Yes.
Sorry if you heard any of the kids in the background.
That's
but
all right.
That's
I'll
classic
catch up
CGS.
with you guys later then.
Yeah.
All right, man.
See you, Matt.
All right, take care.
Yeah,
All
good
right.
night, Matt.
Bye. All right. So they gave. Do we want anything else we want to add for the film here at all?
So we were kind of on the pattern of things that we thought the movie Oh, Matt was airing his grievances there. Things I thought the movie needed more of. We've talked about what a difficult feat of plate spinning it is to get all these different characters involved
Yes.
in a meaningful way. Some characters that I thought kind of got lost in the shuffle, in addition to the obvious Hawkeye, Ant-Man, and Wasp. I didn't think the Falcon really got his moment.
Yeah, and I expected a little bit of a moment between him and Rhodey, given what happened in Civil War.
Would have been nice.
Just a little bit more, and you did.
Yeah, because that wasn't really.
It was kind of glazed over.
Yeah.
I expected them to say or do something, not mean or angry, but just something. And you kind of got that with Rhodey looking for Falcon at the end after he had already disappeared.
Sure.
But I was just looking for something a little bit more. I thought they'd have a line or something together.
Just a little more for the character to do in general. Would have been
Yeah.
nice. And in response to what you and Chris both said about the Scarlet Witch, I agree with you that I like the way they developed her relationship with the Vision. It was somewhat touching, but mainly on the Vision side of things, I thought, because it was like this artificial man learning to love. And Chris is absolutely right. You know, he said we talked about this during the screening. We
You
finally
talked during the screening?
Yes, we were sitting next to each other, and we did exchange a
Yeah,
few
I don't do
words
that.
in the theater.
I don't do that.
It happens. But yeah, the Scarlet Witch's powers are much better on display in this movie, but I'm still waiting for them to really bring across her personality, build a character for her that doesn't involve her losing someone she loves and or going on the rampage with her chaos powers. And it's like all we ever see is her grieving or angry, and it would be nice if they made a Black Widow movie. If we finally get that Black Widow solo flick, if she could come along as like a supporting character, kind of the way Black Widow herself came along with Steve Rogers in The Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
So then maybe we could delve into her a little bit more, since the chances of her ever getting a solo picture are pretty much nil.
Yeah.
But yeah, she needs a little more development. The powers are there, the relationship with Vision is there, but who is she?
Yeah.
That's what the moviegoers need to see that. And on the subject of, well, go ahead first.
Well, on the subject of her, and maybe you were going to say the same thing, is it me, or did she not have her accent through the whole first half of the movie?
Are you talking about Black Widow or Scarlet Witch?
Scarlet Witch. And then
She
towards
never
the
really
end,
had. Did she have one in Avengers Ultron?
Yeah, it was there, and a little bit in
Civil War.
I just didn't sound like it was there at all, and then all of a sudden towards the end, I thought it was there again, and I'm like, okay, maybe
Probably
I'm just hearing
shot
things.
the scenes out of order, kind of like Princess Leia's accent in the
Yeah,
first Star Wars.
exactly. It's just something I noticed, and I could be wrong. Just wanted to know if anybody else heard it.
Maybe she'd been working on eliminating it.
Could be.
Maybe she'd been getting dialect coaching from Natasha.
Yeah,
who lost
absolutely.
her Russian accent long ago.
Absolutely.
But speaking of Natasha, she was kind of wasted in this one,
I thought so,
There was
too.
not nearly enough of her. She wasn't using her talents very much. There wasn't even a one-liner about her new hair color. And I
Yeah.
agree with Matt that the peroxide look didn't really work for her. And it would have been, and it really bore some explanation. I mean, maybe he's got some Matt. One of the things I wanted to ask him, I wanted to ask Matt too, since he's got all the behind-the-scenes information, all the Hollywood rags he seems to read. If he knew why the Infinity Gems colors had to be switched around the way they were, because that was bothering the heck out of me, I must admit, while I was watching the movie. But maybe he would also know something about the hair color of Scarlett Johansson in that role.
Yeah.
And I think, no, I think that was it. Those were the ones that I thought needed a little more screen time.
Okay.
But it's only a 2.5 hour movie after all. And
Yeah,
you've got
and
how
I
many
agree.
characters?
It flew by. Like crazy.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was nonstop. I absolutely loved, and it fit perfectly. Star-Lord, when they're battling Thanos, and he says something, boom, flips Thanos the bird, falls behind into a vortex or a portal that Doctor Strange opens up. I just laughed, and the kids looked at me each time, and they like kind of chuckled at me.
They didn't know who Grimace was either, did they?
Probably not. I know they have known who he is in the past. They used to, once in a while, we'd go to McDonald's or something, and they would get a plastic puppet.
Yeah, those. I
They
remember
had
those.
them yet. So if I say it, they'll know, but I don't know if they realized it in that moment of the movie. But they do know who Grimace is.
Well, that is good.
So
I had a Avengers moment today. I was going to get my eyes examined by Dr. Pete Calder, a friend of ours. I've known him for 18 years, and he's actually been on the show a couple of times.
Came with us to San Diego that one time.
Yes, and he must have known that I was coming in today for an appointment, because when he walked in the room, he's wearing the Infinity Gauntlet that makes a noise and has the colors and the lights up. And I just laughed. I just lost it. It was amazing. Can you imagine walking around the office the rest of the day with the Gauntlet? So, and of course, he loved the movie as well. But so
That's funny.
It was just a lot of fun. Anything else for the movie before we give our fricking swears?
I'm sure I'll think of 10 things on the drive
Yeah,
home.
Yeah, I
but,
mean, just
It's not like I ever thought that they couldn't pull it off, but boy, it's surprising to see how well they pull it off.
yeah.
And it just continues to keep getting the bar set higher and higher. They do better and better. I didn't expect Thanos to look so well done, and it was incredible. I thought the special effects on him were so much more phenomenal than I ever thought they would be. Again, not that it would be bad, but boy, it really looked good. I really applaud them for what they put into it.
A thought from our friend Jamal Eigel. He posted on Facebook, among other things, that this movie made him care about bootleg Darkseid, and that's an accomplishment in itself. He was talking about Thanos. And
Yeah.
I don't know if Jamal, I don't know if you're listening, but I'm a little disappointed in you, buddy. If there's a heck of a lot more to Thanos, especially as Jim Starlin wrote him, than bootleg Darkseid. And if you think that about him, you just haven't read the right comics. That is all I can say. Maybe I'll be able to reproach him in person at Heroes Con, hopefully.
All right. Well, frickin' swears, of course. 5 frickin' swears.
Yeah.
Yep, 5 for me, too. It's rocketed right up into my top 3 Marvel movies.
I don't know about that. I got.
I haven't thought about rankings for it. I mean, I really enjoyed it, but I can't get into those rankings. I mean, that's great. Everyone loves the top 10 lists or top 5 lists.
I've really got to go with Marvel movies almost to a top 10 now. I can't squeeze everything up there.
There's so many.
Just to think, 19, 20 movies this July in 10 plus a couple months years. That's incredible.
It's crazy.
And you know, I mean, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, a huge Star Wars fan, huge James Bond fan. There is no franchise that has been able to do what Marvel Studios has done. There just isn't. No matter whether you like the genre, whether you think superhero movies are a waste or not, there is no franchise ever that has made this amount of money in 10 years and has such a strong following of both people who read comics and follow these movies and people who don't.
And the heck of it is, the strategy was just sitting right there out in the open for all these years, because what Marvel Studios is doing is basically what Stan Lee did back in the 60s at the dawn of the Marvel Age of Comics.
Yep.
They found a way to make it work for films. You know, people, I'm sure geeks in the back rooms of comic shops have been saying for years, if they could only do some kind of line-wide continuity thing for movies or TV shows based on these characters, the same way they've done on the comics for decades, they'd make a mint. And what do you know? Kevin Feige and company have proved those backroom geeks 100% right. And they're being hailed as next-level geniuses for it.
Yeah.
So another tip of the hat to Stan Lee for that.
And I don't get into conversations with people, not that there are many that are had. I don't get into, well, these are so much better than DC. I like the DC movies just well enough. I just think the Marvel movies are doing gangbusters. It's just at the right time. DC's had a great run with a lot of movies. I'm still going to go see every movie that comes out. I'm still interested in them. But boy, oh boy, I'm just impressed with what Marvel Studios has been able to do in such a short period of time.
I know we're probably preaching to the choir here, but if you haven't read or know much about the background of some of these characters or Infinity Gauntlet or War itself, free comic book day this weekend is a great excuse to get into your local comic shops, get some trades. I'm sure there's a lot of sales going. I'm going to try to hit as many stores as I can. I'm heading out to New Jersey this weekend, heading to New York on Sunday, try to get as many shops as I can in between there.
Cool.
Golden Eagle is having their sort of like new grand
That's
opening.
right. I want to hit there.
If they can get themselves open in time.
Yes,
They're having some setbacks of their new location right now.
But also DC Nation Zero is out for like 25 cents this week.
Yep.
So there's a lot of inexpensive comics out there, and to get yourself started. Would you suggest anything for Infinity War fans to read?
Gauntlet.
If you can find Thanos Quest in a reprint anywhere, that as I mentioned earlier, that's a 2-issue miniseries that Jim Starlin wrote back in 1990. It was a sort of a prologue to the Infinity Gauntlet story. It tells how Thanos gathered the gems from the elders of the universe, including the Collector, who had them at that time. So you really get to see Thanos use many of his different skills, his cunning, his brutality, to make his little dream of universal conquest and make it a reality. It's a good look inside the psyche of that character. Also try Jim Starlin's classic Warlock comics of the early 70s, when he really put his not only his stamp on that character, but he developed Thanos far more than he'd had an opportunity to do elsewhere, and then develops kind of a duality between Thanos and Warlock.
Do they have those pretty well traded now?
There is a softcover Warlock by Jim Starlin. trade paperback that collects his couple issues of Strange Tales, the Warlock solo series that followed, and I think the crossover between like Avengers and Marvel 2-in-1 annuals that brought the saga of those two characters temporarily to a close. Okay. So I definitely recommend those, and of course the miniseries Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War. There's also the Infinity Crusade, but while I didn't hate it, I can't really recommend it either. That was the third and final installment in the Infinity Trilogy, and it was a little disappointing.
I want to get a hold of War. I did, for the first time, read Gauntlet over the summer.
I've always been meaning to read that, and maybe at some point.
I liked it. I expected to like it a little bit more. It's not bad. I just didn't. I thought I had built it up as something that should be so grand that when I read it, I'm like, all right, it was really good, but I want to. That's when I came to you months ago and said, what comes next? And I want to read War and see what comes of that. If together I like them a little bit better.
Yeah, I still, I read War before I read Gauntlet, and to this day, I think I actually enjoy War a little bit better, if only because there's more action involved. And let's not forget the Infinity, the miniseries titled simply Infinity, from just a few years ago by Jonathan Hickman, because that introduces a bunch of characters like Thanos' acolytes, the Black Order, the children of Thanos. So cool. And for more information about Thanos, contact your local library.
And of course, out today as we record this, May 2nd, is Avengers #1, written by Jason Aaron, drawn by Ed McGuinness. So that's, I don't know if it's a new jumping on point for a lot of people, but it's a new Avengers #1 coming out the week of the movie coming out. So I think that's a great...
It's got Odin's son Thor back in it. I think it ties into those prehistoric Avengers that Aaron set up in the Marvel Legacy one-shot a while ago.
So hopefully folks give that a shot. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Once again, this episode is brought to you by Collection Drawers, the makers of drawer boxes. You can check them out at collectiondrawer.com.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com and let us know what you think of Avengers Infinity War. If I can get the words out of my mouth.
There's always a thread going on right now.
That's good. I'm behind on that
I've stayed away from it because I didn't want to
get spoiled.
Right.
Yeah. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the episodes. We appreciate it. Keep sending stuff in for Mert. I'm sure we'll get back to muddling him at some point. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and you was talking about it going to the ball club. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From tapes to laser beams, opinions like the sea.